Hey everyone, welcome back, or thanks for joining us. I'm Hayes, this is Almond Brownies, and this is the latest sculpt to progress my Kindred costume. This is the skull, or overall head shape, for Wolf, the other half of Kindred, whereas I've already done Kindred's mask, and I haven't yet done Wolf's mask, because I need Wolf's head. And this is what I'm sculpting here. I'm sculpting it as two pieces effectively for the head, whereby I sculpt the UnderSkull for Wolf, which will then get covered in fur, and on the top of that will then go a separate polyurethane cast mask. Why? Because I like to create work myself, apparently. Actually, it's because I think I can get a better overall effect by doing it this way. It also means I have the mould for a wolf UnderSkull that I can use in the future for different projects, like making werewolves or things for different events. Now, I will admit, this took a remarkably long time, considering I'm just creating an overall shape and don't even need to put details in it. But I was just trying to get everything just right and compromise on my two different goals, having it match the source material, the splash art, and also be good enough to be used elsewhere. The only thing of this sculpt that will actually even be seen is actually the nose, because that will poke out from behind the fur that gets put over it. A little bit into the video, you'll actually see me put in these little eye spacers, just so I know how big the eyes need to be to actually diffuse the LED rings that I'm going to be putting in the eyes. And also as you go, you can see I'm defining where the jaw separates from the actual upper head, because I do plan on making this whole thing articulated, so the person wearing it can go rah 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 at people. Although I'm not actually convinced whether this will be worn as a head or not, but I like that to be the option, because if it's worn as a head, I'm not entirely convinced that there'll be a way for us to see out. Now the ears, I built up a bit of a base for the ears, although I'm not planning on them being part of the actual resin cast here, because I intend to actually use some Eva foam as a base for the fur that will go on, and so the ears will get added in the furring stage. This whole thing used very few tools. The biggest tool I used in this was a knife and a rake to try and make sure everything was smooth, because it helps to have a smooth surface, even though none of this is actually going to show through because it's all going to be covered in fur, because it'll create a better mould. And here you can just see me defining the last details on the nose. I had a little texture with a sponge, and that's about it. The entire sculpt was only a couple of hours, but over 2 days, because I needed to let it dry before I could actually add the final details and pick out the mouth and jaw sections properly, and decide like the actual articulation point just below the cheeks. Now I'm going to let you into a little bit of the mould making, but I don't think this mould making is particularly useful, hence why it's just snuck in here. Because this mould making didn't go very well, I'm going to claim it's because I bought the wrong sort of silicone, and therefore it acted differently than I was expecting, and I was kind of ran in blind. So, new rule for me, check twice, buy once. Simple. It produced a bad mould rather than a failed mould, which just means I'm going to get bad castings, but since the entire thing is going to get covered in fur, it doesn't really matter that much. You can see the stages I've gone through. I've put a layer of silicone down, then a thicker layer of silicone over that, and then a mother mould of plaster, a two-part mother mould of plaster over that, just so I've got the whole shape of the thing captured. And that entire thing is left to set overnight before I take my first casting. You can see me extensively using foam board as spacers and markers and all of that, which I must remember to buy some more of because I'm out. And so we do the plaster mother mould in 2 halves for this, because it is so large. Rather than for Kindred's mask, I did the mother mould in 1 piece because it was a fairly simple shape, and it's just plaster bandages, flash scrim, this is actually Hessian, impregnated with, well, not impregnated, soaked in plaster, slapped on. I drew some holes just as guiding pieces because I completely forgot to include keys on the side, and I also completely forgot to include prying points. Thankfully that didn't actually turn out to matter too much, which I was really lucky about. And then it was just a case of clamping the whole thing together and roto casting as usual. The whole moulding and casting bit was rushed a little bit because I wanted to get a working copy of this done in time to do something a little special for everybody watching, just so I could tag this bit onto the end of the video. Travel to Bournemouth and meet my wolf for a size testing! Shove this on your face! Get it on your face! Get a load of that dog! Get a load of that wolf! Hooray, it fits! The next thing to do will be to cut out the ear holes, so there's some ventilation. cut out around here and create the hinge on here and then strapping on the back, because it's going to be mounted more like that. If you're wondering, no, I haven't really thought how she's going to see, and I haven't actually told her that yet. Check out the t-shirt. I didn't ask her to wear this.
Yes.
Never one.
Without the other.
Like, comment, subscribe. Fucking nerd.